Hello, and welcome to this edition of the ABA's Law Student Spotlight, highlighting the section's Young Lawyer and Law Student Ambassadors. My name is Christy Matelis, and I'm a member of the ABA's Antitrust Section. With me today is Connor Leydecker, a third-year law student at Duke University. Hi, Connor.
Hi, how's it going?
Good, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's a great opportunity.
Well, to get started, how about you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure, as you said, third-year law student at Duke. I'm originally from Buffalo, New York, but I've spent the last decade in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm zooming in today from Durham, North Carolina. It's beautiful here. And I'm currently splitting my summer between Gibson Dunn and Crutcher and the Federal Trade Commission. So very happy to be here today.
Wow, you have a very busy summer.
Too busy, maybe, but we'll see. Hopefully not.
Well, tell me, how did you first get interested in antitrust law?
Sure. Yeah, I took a business law class in undergrad from one of my beloved professors, Allison Burdett. And we learned a little bit about theories of unfair competition broadly, and so I think that first planted the seed that has grown into a great interest in antitrust. I then worked at Delta Airlines for 5 years, and so I started off in pricing, so a lot of supply and demand, but also you get a talking to from Scott McLean, who's the general counsel in charge of antitrust issues, about why you too should care about per se violations of the Sherman Act. So I learned about it from that perspective as a pricer, but also from the business side. I still say we, but at Delta Airlines, they focused a lot on what they called alliances and trying to get antitrust immunized joint venture relationships, as they have with certain airlines like KLM and Air France across the Atlantic. So that got me really interested in sort of how all of the regulatory environment works from the business perspective. And then I started realizing I was more interested in that maybe than the business side. So that's sort of what brought me to law school to begin with.
And tell me, what areas of antitrust law are most interesting to you? I mean, there's a lot happening right now in tech, pharmaceuticals. Is there a particular area you find most interesting?
Sure. I think of the areas where you can work, the litigation space is really interesting to me. I think there's a lot of cases that have been brought lately that are very fascinating. Lots of different theories in novel contexts, I think. Gibson is representing Apple, and so I've been watching the Epic v. Apple trial with great interest and just trying to see what's going on. I'm also quite interested in the conduct side of things, and Gibson has a criminal practice. I'm going to be going to the anti-competitive practices division of the FTC, so hopefully get some experience on the conduct side of things as well.
Well, as a student of antitrust law, I know you're aware that there's a lot happening right now, a lot of big cases. You already mentioned one, Apple v. Epic. And I'm just wondering, of all the developments happening right now, what do you find most interesting?
Sure. Yeah, I think I'm a political junkie, so I've been watching a lot of the proposals and of litigation, or sorry, of legislation in Congress. So I think Senator Klobuchar's bill is quite interesting in what it proposes and what it could mean, and I think it could very quickly make my education moot, which would be good and bad. And there's also, the bills from Senators Tillis and Lee about sort of the regulatory agencies and what they could look like in the future and could get a raise, which would also be interesting. So I think I've been following all of that with a lot of interest. And yeah, just trying to see these theories you learn in school just put into practice and how they turn out in a court of law. So it's, as you mentioned, very interesting to follow lately.
Wonderful. Well, tell me about your work with the ABA as a law student ambassador. How did you first get involved, and what sorts of projects have you worked on?
Sure. Yeah. I think I started to get involved right at the end of my first year of law school, which also coincided with the pandemic. So I think I was looking, ways to get involved in a community, and reached out. I was also started, developing this more significant interest in antitrust and wanted to learn more. And so I reached out, and they said, hey, there's this program. You can do programming and events. We had all these why antitrust, why consumer protection, and why privacy events that I thought were quite fun and able to meet a lot of folks through that organization. So it's been fun to be part of this program and get introduced to the ABA.
That's wonderful that you've been able to get so involved despite a pandemic. I'm very impressed.
Well, thanks. I think they've made it quite easy. So
That's wonderful. So tell me, what's been your favorite part about working as a law student ambassador?
certainly the people, right? I think meeting folks has just been wonderful, and I've had the privilege to work closely with many members, Michaela and Svetlana, and I think there's, you know, everyone is so willing to speak to people, and I found that is really unique and wonderful, because I've had the chance to learn from so many different types of practitioners, which has enriched my education in antitrust like tremendously, because as they say, some things are different in the real world than how you learn in law school, and that's been really wonderful. I had the opportunity to moderate a national Y antitrust panel, and that was really special, because we brought people from all different areas of practice together, and that was a really wonderful opportunity. So I was happy to have it.
Wonderful. So when you think about a career after law school, what would be your ideal antitrust career?
That's tough. I think there's a lot of great paths that one could take, and I've tried to just be zen at accepting the fact that I might go down any number of these paths. But I think I'd be interested also in appellate litigation. So I think at one point I might clerk in the near future. Fingers crossed. And then I think as I go in, I think I'll bounce back and forth between government service and private practice, and I think that would be really enjoyable to get a lot of different perspectives in my career, and hopefully get working on some pretty interesting litigation, which seems like there's a lot of opportunities out there lately for that type of work. So, I think beyond that is just working with people. I think, opportunities where they present themselves, I've always thought it would be fun to be a chief of staff. So, hopefully there'll be opportunities to kind of lead and work with folks in teams as well as I move through my career.
Oh, it sounds like you have a busy career ahead.
Let's hope.
But
I need to get through
very
summer.
interesting, but a very interesting career. So I wish you all the best. With regard to law students, what advice do you have for law students and how they can become involved with the antitrust section?
Sure thing. Yeah, I think there's sort of three reasons why you might want to get involved as a student, right? And the first one, I came from marketing most recently at Delta, and we have a term there called the WIFM, which is the what's in it for me. And so I'll start with that, which is personally, as a student, there's opportunities to learn and explore. And as I mentioned, people are so friendly and accessible in the section that I think it's really special in that way, that people are willing to talk to you. And so I would take advantage of that as a law student. I think people are always very excited to tell you what they're working on, and and teach you a little bit about antitrust along the way. The second, I think, is more kind of societal and for the community. You can help diversify the bar and bring folks to the bar as a student that would otherwise not necessarily be brought to the bar, and that's something that I think is important, and we need to continue to work on. And I've been happy to see that the antitrust section agrees and has been investing in that. And the third, I think, is professional, is just, as we mentioned throughout this, networking and deciding what you want your career path to look like. And the people that can really help you the most understand that are people who have gone in different career paths, right? So I think that's been, certainly for me, three good reasons why, and I hope those are compelling to other folks as well.
I'm sure that will be. So, you've been fortunate that you have a lot of opportunities, I believe, at Duke to get involved. What advice do you have for students who may not have those opportunities? They don't have a club, or they may not have a class. What advice do you have for those students?
Sure. I think, certainly if you do have those, take advantage of them. But there are lots of opportunities outside, case competitions, writing competitions, ways to get involved in this conversation that don't necessarily depend on the resources or opportunities at your school. Or you can also start creating a club, right? Like that's something you could consider right out well. For me, I think my advice would be to try to find resources that are, partially entertainment, but also educational that you find interesting, and just see where there's an intersection with antitrust. Because you'd be surprised, some people would say everything has an intersection with antitrust nowadays. But for me, that's a podcast. I listen to a lot of podcasts. One example is the Vergecast, which talks a lot about technology, and they talk about gadgets, but they also have been talking about a lot of the cases that have been brought in that space. And then the second piece of advice I would say is, seek out different perspectives than your own. I think if you come to this with a certain position or political leaning, really, consider and grapple with the other side. I think it's really revealing, I think, that there are really good arguments on both sides of issues. And if you don't seek those out, sometimes you might think it's simpler than it might actually be. And then the last thing I would say is, really try to talk to folks and learn. As I mentioned, again, I might be a broken record here, but I think the people are the best resource here, right? Especially practitioners, because they have such a different perspective than you might be able to get in law school. And I think that that's super valuable to get early on, because it can really help you make decisions about what you want your career to look like. So just get involved, have fun, and meet people. That's the advice I would give.
Connor, this has been fantastic. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing this great advice to law students, and thank you for your time. And I wish you all the best in your future.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me.